well as military and CCP corporate takeover of Taiwan, India, Afghanistan via the Taliban, Africa, and Sinaloa, Mexico, among many others. This is not only how the Great Fracturing would take place, but it will destabilize the petrodollar in a way that seems likely to be the point. The gas markets could take years to recover from the hyperinflation, but China will own 95% plus of the available resources for electric alternatives. Everyone keeps saying this isn't the same Putin, and it's not. If you expose weakness and fear to a predator, they change. They shift from observer to hunter. Welcome to the hunt. So this video is exactly 3 years old, almost to the day, and it's actually the video that made me stop the channel. After this, all of my videos, which were up to about 50,000 views, all of a sudden lost all of their views on Facebook and on YouTube. And after about 6 months of full shadow banning, I ended up getting a message from both saying that the videos that I was producing had a high likelihood of affecting the outcome of the presidential election, and that my account was deactivated until after the election. And then after that, I just never picked it back up. Now that the features are reactivated, I decided to give it a go and started going through all of the old footage, and thought this video particularly was especially prescient. Let's check it out. Hi, and welcome to the Renegade Podcast. I'm Zach Sparks, and today we're going to be talking about the collapsing US dollar. So first, I'd like to talk about what is the petrodollar. Essentially, in 1971, Nixon pulled us off of what was called the gold standard. So prior to 1971, the US dollar was tied directly to the price of gold. There became a gold shortage crisis, and it looked like America couldn't substantiate the gold that was backing our currency. And so we moved off of the gold standard and moved to the petro standard, which we had an agreement with OPEC, the oil producing countries, to trade oil and energy in the US dollar. What this means is it would create a constant demand for the US dollar, even as it became inflated. So what this allows the Fed to do is using modern monetary policy to expand the amount of dollars in circulation. Literally, they go into their computer and they type in zeros, and suddenly we have more money in circulation. When they say we're printing money, they're not printing anything, they're just creating it in a computer. What that does is it devalues all dollars through an inflationary process, but it allows them to have more dollars to spend. So most people think that the programs that the U.S. funds itself through is funded through taxes. That's largely incorrect. Largely, it's just the creation of money. Now, this would be perfectly fine if the entire world had a constant demand for dollars. If there was no ability to switch from the dollar to another currency that's perhaps not hyperinflationary. There's been plenty of countries who have tried, namely Libya and Gaddafi. When he tried to move to the gold dinar, he died for it. Saddam Hussein talked about moving away from the petrodollar. He died for it. There's been plenty of others who the CIA has taken out in coups over the last 50 years. Basically, anybody who tried to move away from the petrodollar was immediately targeted or threatened with target. And that's pretty much kept everyone in line to the point where they were willing, even our enemies are willing to trade in US dollar because the consequences would be so dire if they didn't. America's in decline, and everybody knows it. Biden is weak. He surrendered in Afghanistan. The Fed is currently doing everything they can to destroy the US dollar, is the best way I could put it. And other countries are taking notice. And as opposed to holding this depreciating value, or depreciating asset, they've opted, logically, to move away from it. And the real reason behind that is we can't attack all of them at once. We can't sustain that sort of threat environment. Since Russia invaded Ukraine, there's been exponential incentive for countries like the BRICS nations, Brazil, China, India, Russia, Iran, Argentina, all to move away from the US dollar and start trading between themselves in something else. What that does is it removes the pin that is pinning the US dollar to an actual asset. And what that does is all of this modern monetary policy over the last 50 years, where they've inflated, essentially inflated the US dollar, it's no longer backed by anything. There's no longer a force of threat to remain on the US dollar. And as people start dumping their U.S. Dollar assets, essentially, or their willingness to continue to use those assets as a trading currency, it will drop the demand for the U.S. dollar. And as the demand drops, it's going to affect the price. So what that means is if all of these countries suddenly stop trading in the U.S. dollar, there will be a lower demand for the dollar, and our ability to purchase internationally will be greatly diminished, and we're going to see hyperinflated imports. This means that everything we get from every other country will suddenly explode in price relative to the U.S. dollar. That means that Americans will not be able to afford things like toothpaste or toilet paper or medicine. It means that the housing market will experience volatility that it's never experienced. I mean, 2008 will be nothing compared to what's coming. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. Really, though, if you can, prep now. Things are about to get far darker as the ruble destabilizes the Chinese market. China, which now deals 75% of its oil imports and Russian exports in rubles, will come under an ever-increasing weight of economic sanctions via Russian commingled economies that China will have no choice but to become more aggressive in pursuit of OPEC and Canadian energy, as well as military and CCP corporate takeover of Taiwan, India, Afghanistan via the Taliban, Africa, and Sinaloa, Mexico, among many others. This is not only how the Great Fracturing would take place, but it will destabilize the petrodollar in a way that seems likely to be the point. The gas markets could take years to recover from the hyperinflation, but China will own 95% plus of the available resources for alternatives. Everyone keeps saying this isn't the same Putin, and it's not. If you expose weakness and fear to a predator, they change. They shift from observer to hunter. Welcome to the hunt. I posted this well over a year ago. When I posted this, you would have had to have been a conspiracy theorist to believe that this was possible. And specifically, I'm referencing foreignpolicies.com's 2009 article titled Debunking and Dumping the U.S. Dollar Conspiracy. For at least the last decade, since 2000, a persistent reoccurring conspiracy theory has held that major oil exporters will stop pricing oil in dollars, which will lead to collapse of the U.S. economy as the dollar becomes worthless. According to some accounts, Iraq's decision to price its oil in euros rather than dollars precipitated the U.S. overthrow of Saddam Hussein, and Iran's threats to move away from the dollar is the real reason the U.S. government is raising the alarm over the country's nuclear programs. Now, there's something called the Project for a New American Century, which was a precursor to these allegations of the dumping of the U.S. dollar, and actually served as a pretext for invasion of these countries. Essentially, it was the U.S. neocon elites' plan since the early 90s to overthrow these countries. But I want to specifically point out the article warns of a grand conspiracy between the Arab oil states, China, Japan, Russia, and France, which Macron announced this last week that they're going to start distancing themselves from the U.S. dollar, the petrodollar, to stop pricing oil in the U.S. dollar by 2018. So it didn't happen by 2018, I believe, because of President Trump. Everyone internationally was afraid of the volatility that they would experience from doing so. Under Biden, it's free reign. Everybody knows it's open season against America, and there's nothing that's stopping that progression. So going back to the Project for a New American Century, I want to reference a couple key points here. So Donald Rumsfeld insisted in a cabinet meeting that Saddam's Iraq should be a principal target of the first round of terrorism. This was in 1997. We can no longer depend on our partners in the Gulf War Coalition to enforce the inspections regime. The only acceptable strategy is one that eliminates the possibility that Iraq will be able to use or threaten to use weapons of mass destruction in the near term. This means a willingness to undertake military action as diplomacy is clearly failing. At this time, when this was written, Saddam Hussein was actually considered an ally of the CIA. They turned against him, and immediately the neocon movement started to push their agenda, taking over these countries. There's actually a list in this paper of I think 23 different countries that say need to be dethroned. That is, kill the leaders, institute our own puppet government where we can control, so that to ensure they don't move away from petrodollar interests. Some of these include Libya, Iran, Iraq, to name a few. But it's far worse than even just that. At this point, we're talking about Saudi Arabia, Brazil, India, China, France, Russia. All of these countries are working together now to essentially bypass the petrodollar, and there's good reason to do so. It's not in their financial or their military interests to be caught holding these dollars when it collapses, and there's a global consensus that it will collapse. So how do we insulate ourselves against this? Honestly, it's a little too late for that. We have hyperinflated the dollar to the point where a crash is almost inevitable. The global banking system is a tightly wound network of commingled economies, whereby if the US dollar collapses, all of the banks are going to cascade. And so countries like France are trying to insulate themselves against this coming collapse ahead of time. That way their currency isn't absolutely obliterated when ours is. Now, as we move forward, what I see happening is the only thing that I see happening. When this currency collapse happens, everyone that has money in the bank is going to instantly lose everything. Now, I fully believe that the Federal Reserve, that is pushing their FedNow initiative, which is basically the precursor to a central bank digital currency. Now, what I think they're going to do after the U.S. dollar collapses, they're going to offer, with the full faith of the U.S. government, they're going to offer to reimburse all of those people of all of those losses with the central bank digital currency. What that means is you're going to get a 1-for-1 or possibly even a 1 for 1.5 replacement for your loss, under the condition that you agree to use this new digital coin, which can be tracked, which can be regulated. It means that they will be able to turn off your purchases. Essentially, this is ushering in a social credit score, as they call it, the highly successful China model. So what this means in terms of your day-to-day life, after this happens, say you want to buy gas for your truck, but you've exceeded your gas quota. That is, you've spent more digital dollars than you're allowed to on gas. They will turn off the availability of your currency to be used for gasoline purchases. And they do this through a series of tags, basically digital identifiers that track every single purchase you make. So there's going to be a database on you. Well, there already is, but there will be an extendified database where they will know exactly how many loaves of bread you've bought, how much meat you've bought, how much gas you've bought, what you're spending your money on outside of that, how much money you're pulling out, in cash to use for untrackable transactions. And they will be able to put regulations in place such that maybe you've bought more meat than you're supposed to this month, and so suddenly your money doesn't work at the grocery store for meat, but it works for crickets. And this is going to be a tool weaponized against the American people to force everyone into this brave new world that Bill Gates et al., World Economic Forum, are pushing. That is, you will own nothing and you'll be happy. You will not even have the autonomy to choose what you buy at the grocery store. And I know this is the plan, because that is what they do in China. When they say that they're moving towards the China model, that is the China model. If you, say, are caught spitting gum on the ground, guess what? You can't use public transportation. Your digital dollars no longer work for public transportation. You can no longer go in to the deli and get a sandwich. Right? So it's going to be a tool that's weaponized against dissenters. If you speak out against the government, guess what? Your digital dollars don't work anymore. And under this new system, it will be illegalized to use traditional currency forms. And that's why there's this big push to create a supremacy over things like Bitcoin, which I believe probably have been introduced and allowed to flourish as a way of building confidence in this digital currency space, to try and get everyone comfortable with the idea of using a digital currency such as Bitcoin. And that way it makes the transition to the CBDC easier and more effective. And once that transition has happened, that's when the tyranny can happen. And the only thing we can do against it is publicly outcry, and outright, if you're forced with that decision of moving into a CBDC or a FedNow system, refuse it outright and vehemently. Social resistance, civil resistance is the only effective way to combat this. I hate to say this, but people are sheep, and they're counting on this. It's the only way that they can move forward with this is with our acquiescence, and we have to use that as a weapon against these people who are trying to take over the world, who have taken over the world and are subjugating us into a neo-feudalist agenda that will destroy every bit of your children's future. When they say you will own nothing and you'll be happy, you will own nothing and you will force to be happy with it, because there is no alternative. In this new system, they see themselves, the World Economic Forum elites see themselves as the intelligent elite class who are capable of maintaining reasonable distribution, and what they call the useless eaters, which is us. They see us as a necessary obstacle to be danced around until they develop the systems, the technologies, where they no longer need us. And at that point, it seems likely that something like a World War III will be used to cull the herd, essentially. And referencing what I mean by that, take China for example. China now has I believe it's 3 single men with no prospects of having a wife for every 2 that have actually successfully found a mate. Now that dates back to their one-child policy, but what that means is there is a surplus of useless eaters, people who can't produce a family, who are going to soon be a burden on the system. That many restless males are going to create a destabilizing population dynamic, and China, being as ruthless as they are, will probably use them as cannon fodder. Those are probably people that they will use in this global war, sacrificing them willingly in an attempt to gain hegemony from a global perspective, and it will likely be highly effective. So in the coming months, look out for anything that your instincts tell you is working against you, because you're probably right. If you hear about the unrolling of FedNow, go on Facebook, scream against it. Go on Twitter, TikTok, and make videos berating it. If you're in the area, go down and protest. These are the only avenues that we have to assert our voice against these people. And honestly, I think it's too late. But this non-passive resistance is the only possible way that we can save ourselves. All right. Well, thank you. Zach with Renegade Podcast. If you liked the video or you learned anything, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments.